New gender-diverse guidelines for Sarasota County Schools are designed to protect students from bullying and discrimination, but since being released, the school board chair and superintendent are disagreeing on how to implement them. SNN's Samantha Sonner joins us live now with more. Samantha.
Thanks, Grant. Yeah, these gender guidelines have been in the works for over a year after the district set up a task force of students, principals, teachers, and nonprofits to help develop best practices. But despite that, questions are now being raised about how these guidelines are going to be rolled out throughout the district. In an email from the superintendent last week, Sarasota School Board Chair Bridget Ziegler heard the district would send out gender-diverse guidelines to schools without a vote from the board.
Something that as highly, I want to say, controversial, high public interest, and has serious implications needs to be discussed and vetted and supported by the board. He's doing this under the guise of guidelines versus policy, circumventing the board, and I think that's a disservice to the public.
It is up to the school board to develop policy, to hire the superintendent and provide direction to him. My job as superintendent is to do the same for our school leaders, to provide direction to them, which is exactly what these guidelines do.
Superintendent Todd Bowden says for the most part, these guidelines are already in use in the schools.
I think what was most remarkable about the interaction with the principals is how little questions that they had, because when they looked at the guide, it reflected what they were currently doing.
We started recognizing that kids needed some options on campus, and we started implementing those options with a lot of student input, faculty input, and staff. So for Booker High School, it was not a surprise because we had systems in place.
Booker High junior Lily Cairns came to Booker from Pineview and is proud that Booker's policies are now district-wide.
There's such a vast difference between Pineview and Booker, because Booker is so much more inclusive, and it kind of steps away from being okay, so you're either this, or this, or whatever. Booker is kind of just you are what you are, and we respect that.
Also, Youth Executive Director Nathan Brummer says these guidelines reflect nationwide best practices.
When we put the best practices in place, we see kids' lives transformed. We have seen kids from one year to the next just turn into different children. They are so resilient, and they are living such positive lives.
They're just going to be growing up in a world where everything that you could be or could want to be is okay and is accepted.
Principals received these guidelines today, but Grant, I don't think that this is going to be the last that we hear about these. The next school board meeting is coming up on November 6th. Superintendent Todd Bowden said today that he does believe he has the majority support of the board to go ahead and roll these guidelines out, but Chair Bridget Ziegler said today that she plans on proposing an amendment to these guidelines, so we are going to have to wait and see what happens.
I've seen a lot of those 3-2 votes, and we'll see where it all lies. But it's going to be very interesting.
And I think it's important that we remember, as the politics of this plays out, that there are kids who are depending on these guidelines in the schools right now.
For sure. Samantha, thanks for that great reporting.
All right, thanks, Grant.